Welcome to this webinar and conversation with a distinguished panel on what it will take to expand early education and preschool in California. We're broadcasting from the Stanford University campus. I'm Louis Friedberg, Executive Director of EdSource. We are very pleased to be presenting this webinar with our partners, Policy Analysis for California Education, or PACE, as many of you, and the Learning Policy Institute. I should mention that if you'd like to get EdSource's reports on these and other matters at no charge on latest developments in education reform, please sign up on our website at edsource.org. As all of you know, we are at a pivotal period in education reform in California. We've just elected a new governor who is probably more committed to expanding early education and preschool than any governor in California's history. He himself has 4 young children and so is kind of living the issues that many of you are dealing with on a daily basis, either as parents or workers or teachers. And I'll just say, this is what Governor Newsom told us during the campaign. He said, as governor, I'll be committed to universal preschool, equipping all of California's children with the tools they need to succeed when they start kindergarten. And as to how it should be funded, he said, this will be a major priority for me as governor. And I'm committed to identifying the resources to ensure a robust early education system. So we will get more details on this, of course, when the governor-elect, but he will be sworn in by January 7th, and shortly after that, he'll be producing his new budget and for the coming fiscal year, and we'll all get a better idea of what he has in mind. But in the meantime, we've assembled a very distinguished panel, some of whom are here with us at Stanford and others in remote locations. Deborah Stipe is a graduate school of education and wears many hats, and was also a key author of the several papers on early education, having in the Getting Down to Facts project, which we'll be referring to throughout this discussion. Beth Malloy, to my left, is a senior researcher and policy analyst at the Learning Policy Institute, based right here in Palo Alto. Welcome, Beth.
Thank you.
And on the line remotely, we have Ellen Freeney, who is a senior co-director of the National Institute for Early Education Research at Rutgers University in New Jersey, and she'll be talking with us about what lessons California can learn from what other states have done in this area. Also very pleased to have Beatrice Leiva-Cutler, who is Executive Director of Bahia Inc. And Centro Vida, a pioneering preschool and after school and summer program serving bilingual students in Berkeley, California. Also very pleased to have Yolanda Valdez, who is superintendent of the Cutler-Orosi Joint Unified School District in Tulare County. So thank you to the panelists, and thank you to all of you out there who are joining us today. So we're going to start with Deborah Stipe, who, as I mentioned, was a key author of several of the papers on Getting Down to Facts, has been looking at the early ed landscape for many decades, I would say. And she's going to kind of lay out the landscape for us. Deborah, welcome.
All right. Thank you. Getting Down to Facts 2 is a large initiative that has includes over 30 reports on the state of education in California, pre-K through 12. I and my colleagues authored a set of reports that were specifically focused on early learning. This is just a list of the topics that we covered in that report, and all of the reports for Getting Down to Facts are downloadable from gettingdowntofacts.com. So just a few things that we found as challenges in California, which I think is timely to lay out, because these are the issues that we're going to have to address as we develop a more effective and more comprehensive and more supportive system for young children and their families. The first thing is no surprise to any of you who are in the field, which is that the system is incredibly complex. There are many agencies, organizations, funding sources, and so on, which create something of a nightmare for parents trying to figure out what they're eligible for, and for providers who often have to weave resources from various agencies and funding sources. Another thing that is very clear is that the standards are relatively low in California, but they're also highly variable. So you have teacher requirements that vary hugely from program to program. Staff to child ratios vary. The curriculum standards required vary. I'm going to come back to the teacher requirements in just a moment. But one of the things that is not unique to California, but California is very high on, is the number of children that are in license exempt care. These are programs that have virtually no standards that they're made to meet. California ranks 11th among the 50 states in the percentage of children who are in license exempt care. We do have QRAS, a quality improvement strategy, but in California, the participation is very low. The most recent data suggests that indicates that only 29% of licensed child care centers and only 7% of family child care homes participate in QRAS. California, compared to other states, doesn't have incentives, for the most part, for programs to participate. Many states have tiered reimbursement, which is, of course, an important assessment for participation. I wanted just to bring home the issue of the different standards. Look just at the teacher education requirements for 4-year-olds. These are the various programs that a 4-year-old might find him or herself in. They could be in a license exempt care program where there's no requirement for any kind of training for the child care provider. Or they could be in transitional kindergarten where the requirement is a bachelor's degree plus a teaching certificate, plus a variety of other levels of training. So the same 4-year-old could be in a program of very, very different expectations for training. Now, we're going to speak later to the issue of what is the ideal training and what is actually important for preschool teachers to have in their backgrounds, but there's actually no justification or rationale for this level of variability. And also, the highest level of training in California is essentially 24 post-secondary units, which is very low compared to most states, which require now at least a bachelor's degree, and in some cases, in many cases, a teaching credential. One thing that most of the people, I think, who are signed up to this webinar already know, which is people in early childhood education earn very low wages. They typically do not receive any kind of benefits. Child care providers earn about $12.29 an hour, preschool teachers about $16 an hour. And I think one of the facts that sort of blew me away was the 58% of child care providers in California are on public assistance. The other thing about California is, although quite a few preschool teachers do, or people who are doing childcare do have bachelor's degrees, it doesn't make a whole lot of difference in their salary. Now, one of the issues to tie the issue of wages to education together, many of us would like to increase the educational requirements to put them more on a par with other states, and what we think is needed for people to take the very demanding task of working with a large number of young children. But we certainly can't do that without wages that are commensurate to the education that we might ask people to have. The other thing, I think, I'm sorry, I missed one. The other problem is just access. We have a lot of children in California who don't have access either to childcare, especially infants and toddlers. We have a huge shortage with infants and toddlers. And and many who don't have access to affordable preschool. Children with disabilities are also underserved. Only 28.5% of children ages 10 months to 5 years receive screening, and there are very few slots in preschools that serve non-handicapped children that handicapped children can participate in. And then finally, California is really deficient in the amount of data that we have available. So we lack data for decision makers to make judgments about what's effective and what kinds of policies they should do. Providers lack data that would help them find children to fill slots to improve quality, and parents lack data on the quality of programs and where slots are available and what they're eligible for. These are the problems, the challenge. I don't want to call them problems, I want to call them challenges. These are our opportunities in California, and I think Beth's going to talk to you about some strategies for addressing these.
Just before I let you go, Deborah Stipe, just a quick question, and I hope we can get into this with the other panelists as we go forward, but where should the focus be? I mean, the focus in terms of the advocacy community has really been on preschool and also legislatively, but Governor-elect Newsom has also talked a lot about 0 to 3. Where do you see the balance there?
This is really a hard one because I think it's all of the above, and all of us want all of the above because there's a pent-up need that the needs in early childhood have not been addressed for a long time in California. I'm not going to answer that exactly, but I am going to say that we have to balance quality with access, and that I would not want to see all of the attention on increasing slots, increasing access without equal attention to ensuring that we're providing high quality, because all of the research that shows the benefits of preschool, especially the long-term benefits, are in very, very high quality programs, as we're going to hear when Ellen tells us a little bit about New Jersey and some of the other states. So we've got to pay attention to quality as much as to increasing access.
Okay, well, I think that's a good segue to Beth Malloy from the Learning Policy Institute.
Wonderful. Thank you. Okay, so Deborah just really clearly demonstrated that the data show that California has a long road ahead to achieve the goal that Governor-elect Newsom and others have articulated, that all children from birth until kindergarten entry have access to high quality early learning opportunities in California. And although the challenges California faces may seem daunting, it's important to remember we're not alone. And there are examples from within the state and across the country of states and districts that have faced similar challenges, but have found ways to do better for their young children. LPI's own research points to a need for state policymakers to take concrete, coherent steps across 5 key areas to improve California's early learning system. And I'm going to walk you through each of those right now. So first, California really needs to build a more coherent system of ECE administration. You saw that maze-like map of how early learning programs are funded and administered across the state. And action is needed to unify ECE and streamline decision-making at the state and the local level. This may require designating a single governing body with both the authority and the expertise to coordinate all ECE programs at the state level, and establishing and adequately funding a coordinating body at the county or regional level.
And Beth, just in case there are people out there who have not been following this field, ECE is?
Early care and education.
Okay,
yeah.
And
I am going to use that liberally. So we're talking about sort of all of the programs that young children access, both for care while their parents work, as well as for early learning opportunities. This may, furthermore, the research is clear that parents and providers in California need access to better information. Developing a one-stop shop online portal would make it easier for parents to find care and also make it easier for providers to connect with families that need their care. AB 2960, which was signed by Governor Brown this year, has begun this process, but more work is necessary to fully realize the potential of the portal to help providers meet families' needs. Finally, policymakers and administrators also need better information on early learners and their educators in the state of California. The data that is currently available is piecemeal and it's difficult to synthesize into a coherent picture of the state's early learning system. To address this, California could invest in a comprehensive data system capable of compiling information about programs and children so that policymakers and administrators can actually be equipped with the information that they need to make informed decisions. Next, our research suggests, and Deborah's as well, that California needs to expand its subsidized system significantly in order to make ECE affordable for all families of children under the age of 5. In California, most subsidized early learning opportunities are targeted towards children from low-income families. But targeted programs often segregate low-income children from their higher-income peers, which may perpetuate inequalities in their early learning experiences. There are also thousands of young children in this state living in families with incomes just over the eligibility threshold for targeted programs who absolutely cannot afford the cost of high-quality early care and education. So these issues point to the need for establishing universally available preschool for 3- and 4-year-olds to support equity and integration for very young children. And this is something that several states, West Virginia and Oklahoma and Washington, D.C. have also already done. Expanding access through a mixed delivery system in particular, as West Virginia and New Jersey have done, can ensure families have choices, can help build the capacity of an undersupplied system, can help to ensure continuity of care for young children, which is critical to their development, and can also ensure that existing programs, especially those that rely on the tuition from older children to subsidize the care that they provide to younger children, are able to remain financially stable. Okay. The data also make it clear, as Deborah pointed out, that California cannot focus solely on preschoolers. The state has significant unmet need for affordable, high-quality care for its youngest learners. And I think it's worth repeating that statistic, that a mere 14%, just 1 in 7 infants and toddlers that are eligible for publicly subsidized care in California actually receive it. Now, expanding access for infants and toddlers as well as preschoolers could be accomplished by subsidizing care for more parents using a sliding fee scale. Sliding fee scales have the benefit of ensuring no family pays more than it can afford for high quality care, while reducing the unintended segregation that can stem from targeted programs, and moderating the overall investment that the state needs to make to serve all families better. Again, there are examples of this strategy in action, particularly in large districts across the country, including Seattle and Denver. Moving on to one of the biggest challenges impacting California's ability to provide high quality early learning opportunities, as Deborah also pointed out, is the inadequate preparation, compensation, and ongoing professional support for the early educator workforce. Research suggests that increasing compensation is critical to building a more qualified and stable workforce. And there are several steps that the state could take to give providers opportunities to raise educators' wages, and these include increasing childcare reimbursement rates and investing in apprenticeship programs that link increased qualifications for providers directly to wage increases. Research also suggests that early educators need more training, especially early childhood specific training, to be able to provide the kind of high quality early instruction that young children need. California should consider raising expectations for teacher qualifications beyond the floor set by current state requirements, especially for those settings which Deborah noted can be as low as just simply passing a criminal background check. The state should also consider providing supports, such as scholarships or paid leave, for the existing workforce to be able to meet those expectations. This is really important because one of the greatest strengths of the current workforce is its diversity. The current workforce closely mirrors the demographics of the young children that they serve in California, and supporting the existing workforce is critical to maintaining that diversity. Finally, investments in higher education programs are needed to ensure that they adequately prepare early educators for the demands of the classroom. Programs should be designed to confer the competencies that are critical to supporting learning for all children and offer opportunities, as Deborah mentioned, for educators to practice those skills in the classroom. Now, although supporting a highly qualified workforce is a critical step towards improving the quality of early learning programs, there are several other steps that could help ensure every child has access to high quality early care and education. First, the state could incentivize or require providers with the lowest quality to meet higher standards. The state could also increase its investment in its quality rating improvement system by refining the quality matrix to ensure it fairly and effectively evaluates and incentivizes quality across early learning settings, and then move towards requiring the participation of all providers receiving state funds, as Michigan, North Carolina, and many other states have done. Ultimately, if the state does choose to expand its QRIS system, it should require a minimum level of quality for providers receiving public funds and then implement a tiered reimbursement rate system to support providers' effective efforts to improve their own care. This type of system would really ensure that all providers have access to quality improvement activities. Okay, finally, the research points to the need for California to take steps to improve alignment across ECE and early elementary school. For example, the state could invest in leadership training that would develop an understanding of effective teaching strategies to support young children, especially dual language learners, across all settings, including elementary school principals. The state could also consider providing training to ensure that educators across early childhood and elementary school really understand the science of child development so that instruction from birth to age 8 is developmentally appropriate and aligned. This can be accomplished by ensuring educators from preschool to 3rd grade have access to joint professional development so that educators and leaders across early childhood and elementary school can learn from each other and align their practice. So before I wrap up, I just want to acknowledge again that California has a long way to go, and that can feel really challenging, but it's also really important to remember what recent research from Getting Down to Facts, Sean Reardon and his colleagues have made clear. Strengthening California's early learning system is foundational to the larger goals of our education system as a whole and to the future of our state. We now have an extensive research base in California that points to some clear next steps for the state. And there is also much to be learned from successful models at the local level and in other states about how to make high quality ECE for all children in California a reality.
Okay, well, thank you so much. Beth Malloy, got it in under
I did
it. Very good. Beth Malloy from the Learning Policy Institute. We're now going to go across the country to Ellen Freeney with the National Institute for Early Education Research at Rutgers University. And Ellen has been integrally involved in the major expansion of preschool in New Jersey. Ellen, welcome.
Thank you so much, Liz, and thank you for inviting me to speak to you briefly about the pre-K system here in New Jersey and how it fits in the national context as well. I'm really excited to see California on the verge of building a system of high quality early learning. The pre-K program I'll be describing began in 1999, and it is available to all 3- and 4-year-olds in 35 of our school districts. But we've also in the last 2 years been embarking on a statewide expansion, which we hope to have fully funded by 2022. So in some ways we're feeling your pain, but we're building from a high quality program already that exists in 35 school districts. Could you go to the next slide, please? Thanks. So as I said, this is in our urban settings, and there's a long explanation about that, which I won't go into here, but you're welcome to contact me if you want more information. But this represents about 25% of our population, and we are expanding to approximately 100 more school districts. The Department of Education in New Jersey funds these school districts fully, and the average cost is around $13,000 per child. 2/3 of the children are in private provider classrooms, Childcare and Head Start, and 1/3 are in district classrooms. Although administration of the program flows through the district. So the district makes the policy decisions, typically in concert with the local providers. We do provide, as some of the things that Beth and Deborah talked about are present in our program, and including teachers certified in early childhood education with trained assistant teachers, and they're all paid at parity with teachers in the public schools. Actually on the same salary scale, or originally that was the case. There have been a few backslidings in a couple of districts, which is something to try to protect against. It's a full school day, meaning a 6-hour day for the school year. We have a very small class size of 15, so a ratio of 1 to 7, but no more than 15 in a classroom. The program standards include strong curricula, aligned with child and classroom assessment so that there's a coherent system. And there's also support for fidelity of implementation provided by the district and by the state. We include children with disabilities in virtually every classroom, and there is specific support for the teacher and how to go about doing that inclusion. And we have similar support for bilingual education, but are not as consistent in offering actually bilingual instruction, which is a concern of mine and something we need to improve. We also have coherent and comprehensive professional development and coaching. In other words, the professional development, the workshops teachers go to are ongoing and linked to the coaching that they receive. And administrators, building administrators and district administrators receive training as well. And all of this is folded into a continuous improvement system informed by data at every level. These are very important and I think critical components. But I would say that if I could only do one thing, it would be certified teachers paid at parity. Because all those other things are very hard to accomplish well when the teacher, when there's a lot of teacher turnover and the teacher's not well prepared. And those things can be overcome with well-prepared teachers. I do think all of these are essential, but if you made me choose only one, that would be my choice. Can you move to the next slide, please? So I just wanted to show you what it took, because we have, I'll show you in a slide later that we have had beneficial effects through at least 5th grade, but we started out not that great. Now, many of you may know the early childhood environment rating skills, but it's a observational tool to measure quality in classrooms. And you can see that with the blue bar that in the beginning, the majority of classrooms were below the midpoint. So our average was below a 4 on a scale of 1 to 7. With the infusion of resources and better program standards, by 2005, the majority were above a 4, and by 2008, the majority were scoring above 5, which is a good. And so it took some time. I want to explain that as well. But we did transform the quality of the program. Can you go to the next slide, please? So this just shows our benefits through 4th and 5th grade. We're now studying the same cohort of children in high school, so we'll have even later outcomes to share shortly, we hope. And LAL is for language and language arts and literacy, and math and science. And you can see that the blue bar is the effects of 1 year of this program, which is called the Abbott preschool program. And the red bar shows the effects of 2 years. So we get, in many areas, almost twice the outcome and gain as we for 2 years versus 1 year. You could go to the next slide. So we also see benefits in reduction of grade retention and special education placement at grade 5. The darker blue shows the children who went to preschool, so about 12% of the total population is retained and or placed in special education, whereas in contrast, about 19% of children who did not get pre-K, and about are retained in grade and 17% in placed in special education.
Ellen, one of our viewers called in with a question as to whether your New Jersey model does allow for full inclusion for students with disabilities.
Yes, as I mentioned on that one slide, we do include the majority of classrooms are inclusive classrooms. In other words, each one of them has children with disabilities. It varies slightly. And of course, there are some children for whom that is not the least restrictive environment. And so they are served and self-contained. And it does vary somewhat by district. Not all districts are as effective at this as others. But could I ask you to go back to slide 2, please? Because I wanted to just leave that there while I made a few last comments about how we got here. Some of the critical issues and how we were effective in getting this expansion and getting this program in place are that we had strong collaboration among key stakeholders. We had advocates, teachers unions, the K-12 professional organizations, the superintendents, the principals, the teachers. We had the New Jersey version of the Association for Education of Young Children. We had the New Jersey Head Start Association, and we had the faculty in higher education. All of us worked in a combined and coordinated coalition to push for these standards. Education was always our focus. There are other great things and important things that we need to be offering children 0 to 5, but the purpose of this program was to improve their outcomes in school. And that was our focus and our critical focus all the time. It was also important that in expanding, we had regionalized responsibility or decentralized responsibility. So the districts were responsible for serving their universe of children and for recruiting child care providers and Head Start. This was important because the state couldn't run all that themselves. And at the same time, program standards were determined at the state in consultation with the key stakeholders. And I could talk a lot more about that, how we went about doing that. We mandated standards, but we allowed time to get there. So in our mixed delivery classrooms, the majority of teachers did not meet the standard. We provided scholarships for them to go back to school to get their certification and bachelor's degree. And the way we funded that was that those classrooms were paying their teachers less until they received the full qualification, and so that differential went to their scholarships. So in other words, the cost of that classroom in some ways remained the same because we were investing in the teacher's degree in the beginning. Once she had the degree, it went to her salary. It was critical that we had that scholarship program, and also critical that we had an alternate route program in New Jersey, and it was a high quality alternate route program. So if you already had a bachelor's degree, you took coursework toward your certification. And in that way, we were able to expand rapidly.
Ellen, can I just get in one quick question
Sure.
from the floor, and then we're going to circle back to you. But a question was, what kind of coaching, you mentioned coaching, was provided to teachers? Could you just briefly,
Sure.
What did that consist of?
So in every school district, in the beginning, until the teachers, the workforce was more stabilized, we had one master teacher for on average, about every 12 classroom, and the master teachers were the coaches. We trained them. We had a master teacher seminar that they attended, and they received a micro-credential from that. And importantly, within that group, there were specialists in inclusion and specialists in bilingual education. So that in any school district, you had generalist early childhood experts who knew how to coach, but you also had specialists who understood inclusion and bilingual education.
Okay, well, thank you for your work, potential model for California. And I should have mentioned, for those of you who want to call in questions, we'll try to get to as many as we can. There's a Q&A button there on your screen, so send in the questions and we'll try to get to them. I do want to go to two of our panelists now, who really are probably, due respect to everyone else, the most important people on the panel here, because they're actually doing the work on a daily basis. Yolanda Valdez, who is superintendent of the Cutler-Orosi Joint Unified School District in the Central Valley, and Beatriz Leiva-Cutler, who's executive director of Bahia, both serving Latino students, English learners. As I think many of you know, 53% of kids in California schools are now Latino, many of them English learners. So really, if this is going to work, we have to figure out particularly to serve that population. Of course, everyone needs to be served. But Beatriz, could you, and Yolanda, just very quickly, 30 seconds, tell us what do you do? And then I'm going to ask Yolanda what you're doing in early ed. Beatriz.
I am the executive director of Bahia, the Bay Area Hispano Institute for Advancement. It's a nonprofit organization that's been around for 43 years. I've been with the organization 38 years. I'm also an elected third-term school board member here in Berkeley Unified School District. So I've been around long enough to see the children that I started off in as 2-year-olds or as infants, all the way to give them their diploma in high school. So many years, and have those children return as parents into our program.
While I have you on the line, I'll just ask you quickly, the issue of quality has come up. How do you deal with quality? How do you build quality into your program, particularly around teachers?
Particularly around teachers. Well, first of all, one of the things I didn't hear that really affects our quality is our buildings and our facilities. There is not enough money to be able to help those programs build their quality programming, a safe workplace, hygienic caring place. And facilities is very important. Many of us who are in childcare have buildings that are old and are old portables that the school districts had. And so a lot of money needs to be going into building the infrastructure of organizations and childcare sites. That's one thing that I think really stands out for me and for many of the childcare directors. The other is we have an aging workforce, and we're not recruiting and not bringing in young people interested in the field. One, because of as you've heard, the salaries. Their salaries are low enough and not competitive enough for someone who's just graduating with a BA.
Okay, we'll circle back. Yolanda Valdez, tell us a little bit about your district and the expansion. You've really expanded preschool access in your district.
So my district is about 4,200 students. We're about 95% Latino. When students begin in kindergarten, we have about 75 to 77% of them are English language learners. We learned early on, about 5-6 years ago, we started, we really made it an initiative to provide our young kids opportunities to be very much prepared for kindergarten. And so we expanded our offerings in preschool. We extended TK age. Our goal was to provide our students with quality language-rich environments before they even started in kindergarten. And our board wanted this for all students. And so we removed every barrier that we saw that we could afford to remove away from that preparation for kindergarten.
And how did you remove those barriers?
Well,
I mean, where did you get this costs money, right? Where did that come from?
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. So we learned that many of our parents, or some of our parents, were not sending their students to preschool because they did not meet the income requirement. So through our supplemental concentration funds, through our LCAP funds, we basically funded anyone who did not meet the income requirement. So the goal is that everyone in our community has access to preschool. Additionally, what we did through our LCAP supplemental concentration funds is extended our TK age to January 30. You can extend that age. And next year, we're going to be even more aggressive on both those fronts through a partnership through the Central Valley Foundation. And so we have data that shows that what we're doing is really paying dividends. Our students with extended TK and with their preschool opportunity, they stay at grade level. And we're tracking them throughout the grade levels. And I think one of the major key factors here is that we build the capacity of the staff we have. I mean, we have who we have in our communities. We're a very rural community. There's two communities. Cutler Orosi is one community, but they're two little communities. And our teachers, our support staff, we've built in and bought in professional development time so that we can build their capacity. Our mantra in Cutler Orosi is that we're going to provide the gift every single day. And the gift is great instruction the first time. I have a director that provides actionable feedback to visits all the preschools every day and is constantly building capacity. We've built in weekly professional development, monthly professional development, and we bought 2 days from 2 complete days, plus all the other days we had within our school year for professional development.
That's it.
Additionally,
That's good. Yolanda, you also mentioned when we talked earlier that this challenge of teacher pay, I'm sure it's certainly your teachers would like more pay, but where the cost is lower in more rural California, that it's more possible for teachers to live on those salaries, which is interesting.
It is more possible. A full-time preschool teacher in our area would be able to live a decent life with our pay scale. I can see that in more the Bay Area, LA area, it would be, I just don't see how anybody could do it. But in our area, it is more accessible.
I wanted to go to, and you reinforce, California is so diverse, so large that solutions might work for one place, may not work. And there are the opportunities in areas where you might not think that there are opportunities. But Beatrice Leber-Cutler, the professional development, do you have, and this seems to be very important in terms of the quality piece of it, do you have sufficient resources to provide?
Well, Yolanda mentions one thing in terms of her district having to pay for the professional development days. We get reimbursed for days serving children. We don't get reimbursed for days of professional growth. So if the state were to reimburse us and let us be open for additional days for professional development, that would change. Otherwise, the money's coming from someplace else. And that someplace else is always where the director, the superintendent, and the principal of the early childhood programs are scrambling to find that funding to be able to provide those PD days for our teachers. And so that would definitely help. Give us 3 days, give us 5 days in the school year that we can stay open and provide those professional development quality learning days for our teachers.
Can I ask a question?
Deborah Stipe is going to, yeah,
we funded that professional development through our supplemental concentration funds. And also we have academic coaches in each one of our elementary schools. We have several actually. And we task them with also supporting our preschool staff. When we do instructional rounds, we also conduct instructional rounds in our preschool because we want quality across our entire system.
The other part,
yeah.
Can I ask a question about, this has to do with families' needs and the way we've organized childcare and preschool in California. The care and the education are often thought of as two separate strands, whereas for parents, especially parents who are at work, which is most parents, the half-day pre-K really doesn't work for them. And I know that there are slots in the Bay Area that sit empty because parents can't figure out how to navigate a half-day program when they're at work all day. And that's not even to mention the fact that many parents now are working evenings and non-regular hours. But just even for those who work regular hours, how have you addressed the issue of childcare and preschool?
Well, it's true that we have families who do a part-day program, one program, and then come in and have someone pick up the child and go into another program for the rest of the afternoon. And that's a challenge for families. But I don't think it's a one-size-fits-all in terms of what families need. There are families who need the part-time, just want the part 3 hours program, and there's parents who need the 6 hours and the 8 hours. it has to be that we should be able to provide that in any community, that kind of different menu that parents need because they are working. And we have parents who work at night. Where are the children? We have parents who work on the weekend. Where are the children? There's programs, you know, I often think about that. My childcare is empty on the weekends, and we have families that are working 12-hour shifts. What we should be utilizing those centers for providing care to families too. But that's another workforce, and you know, it's challenging, but it's doable. I think that there are solutions out there and that programs can provide.
Yolanda Valdez, and then we're going to try to squeeze in a few more questions.
Sure. Well, that's interesting you asked that question. We just finished conducting an extensive survey of our community, and one of the things we're going to be implementing next school year is also other opportunities for, again, removing all the excuses of why your child isn't in preschool. So we are going to be offering full day. We're also going to be offering a mommy and me opportunity because we learned that there's some parents that don't feel like they want to send their child to preschool. So then we want them to come to school with them. So we're looking at having those opportunities for those parents so that we do have all students in preschool.
Louis, can I say one thing?
Okay.
Having been on the school board now for 10 years and attending the California School Board Association conference, rarely ever do I see the early childhood feel in those rooms and in those conferences. The school board members, superintendents don't know enough about early care education and the importance it has to academic learning later. And so I would really push for that kind of community, our community, to really push into the California School Boards, the superintendents, trainings and learnings, because there's a real division and gap there, and that needs to be bridged. And kudos to the Cutler or senior, because your superintendent and your school board took this on and are willing to use LCAP funds. Very few school districts are using their LCAP funds for their early childhood programs.
Well, you've just segued because I was going to ask this question, and some of these questions I'm afraid to ask because they are very complex. But I'm going to ask you to just tell us briefly. You mentioned, and then getting down to fact points about, we need more alignment between pre-K and K-12. Okay, just tell us, Deborah Stipe and Beth Malloy, I'll just ask you, and maybe Ellen can just jump in very quickly. How does one do that? Beatrice, you suggested regard to school board meetings. That would be one start if you're interested, but how does one do that?
There are districts that are very good models in California that have really made an effort to create greater synergy, greater connectedness. San Francisco, Long Beach, Fresno. We've interviewed those superintendents. They've incorporated, in some cases, the pre-Ks in the elementary school. In many cases, they put the elementary school principal over the pre-K. They have, in Long Beach, for example, actually gone out and invited the local community programs that feed into their kindergarten to be part of their professional development. But all of the superintendents claim that because of the pay differential, the credentialing differential, the way the work is organized for pre-K versus kindergarten, first, second grade teachers, they feel like they're really up against a wall in trying to make this happen given current California policy. So I think we're going to have to change some policies to facilitate districts in doing that work.
And Beth Malloy.
Sure. I would just add that, as superintendents have moved early care and education preschool programs into elementary schools and put principals over preschool classrooms, I think it's critically important to facilitate professional learning for those principals around what good early childhood education looks like. What are the strategies? What would teachers be doing? Because I think that they're often either at a loss and sort of are suggesting that the educators should be doing something differently because it's not what they're used to in early instruction doesn't look like third grade instruction. Or they're sort of, so detached from the knowledge they need, they sort of just let the educator do their own thing, which may be better, but also leaves that educator feeling very siloed.
Abandoned.
Yeah, abandoned.
But as Yolanda Valdez's experience, a lot can be done at the local level without Sacramento telling people that they have to do it.
May I just add one thing? Yeah, and I can tell you, this is my 5th year as superintendent. I've been site principal at every level, you know, in the K-12 system. And one of the major changes that I made in the district right off the bat was that there be alignment. The preschool program was a separate program. Yes, it was on the campus at some corner on the elementary campus. But one of the very first things that I did was, no, this is your program. You are above this program. There needs to be alignment. These kids feed to you, and we need to build all the preschool teachers' capacity. So that alignment, there's you know, when you have a mindset that this is another program, the after school program is a different program, preschool is a different program, and then the K, you know, 5 is a different program. That's where the problem is. There's no alignment of all these efforts.
Ellen, I'm gonna ask you to answer another question because I'm also watching the time. But I did want to get this question, which is a key question, which is teachers, what kind of credentials should we expect? AA degrees, BA degrees. I guess I just want to get a quick sense. I mean, I'm going to start with Beatrice because you've actually allowed some of your assistant teachers to actually get their BAs and so on. But this is one of the key issues.
What was it for Ellen? For me? Well, I really believe that there's an opportunity here because in our workforce, we have many teachers that have been in the field for 10, 15, 20 years. We have a dedicated workforce, and many of them have been working just with the 24 units. But then they have to go to get the additional education. They have to go to school on the weekends or in the evenings. So one of the things that I've been thinking about that should be extended to programs more is giving waivers so that from the Commission on Teacher Credentialing so that teachers can continue to function as teachers and site supervisors, and we can grow our workforce from within because these are people who have been working in the field, know the field, but don't have the title to be able to be in our programs and cover our programs. And so I think that would definitely help a large group of people that are been in the workforce for many years, and also giving them a different menu in terms of how we can get our training. I definitely think that we need coaches to push into our classrooms, to come into our sites, to be able to see the work they're doing, give them the mentoring and supervision that they need to bring up their quality of care and service to our families. The other part is we need to incorporate much more into our training parent engagement involvement because that we all see that and know that how critical this is in school, but it's also starts in preschool. If we have those relationships with parents will have that lifetime relationship with their school through high school and into college. And so I think that those are critical pieces of training that does not exist, not even for the K-12 teacher, doesn't exist for superintendents, doesn't exist for teachers. We need to have that as a critical piece in our training.
Ellen Freeney, you have set the bar pretty high there in New Jersey in terms of the BA. How has that worked? Is that even practical?
Well, yeah, it was practical. We did it. I mean, as I said, I didn't give you all the history, and I won't here either because that's not what you're here for. But we did have time. Teachers who, once the program started, when their center contracted with the school district, teachers who did not have their degree had 4 years to complete their degree with a scholarship to pay, and the scholarship was paid to the institution, not so that the teacher didn't have to shell out any money, which was really important because they didn't have any money to pay for it. They couldn't. It wasn't a reimbursement. The scholarship was already provided, and but then we, as they made progress, we actually got a waiver to extend that to 6 years, so that those who were making good progress had till 6 years. Someone asked in the chat, how did the quality get improved so much? Well, part of it was because teachers were going back to school and learning more. Part of it was funding. Part of it was center directors were learning more. Part of it was the master teachers were there. Part of it was there was a high quality curriculum. I mean, it's a lot of things that matter. But I still think the BA, I can't express this enough though, the BA with parity, you will lose these teachers if you acquire a BA and don't pay them. You have to pay them.
With parity, you mean
Pay parity with elementary teachers.
Pay parity as the shorthand, pay parity with elementary school teachers.
Yeah.
I'm just going to ask Deborah Stipe, because we are here at Stanford University, but the question was, how can universities and other professional learning and technical assistance providers be most useful? And of course, we have multiple institutes of higher education involved in this field, but it's going to take a lot of different players here to make this work.
I think we have to recognize in California that we're going to have to build capacity at the higher ed level. If we're going to require more training, preparation, I prefer the word preparation than training for teachers, then we're going to have to build capacity at the higher ed level because they don't have that capacity right now. The most difficult piece is going to be adding the practice teaching, supervised practice teaching, because that is, it's expensive. You need to have relationships with programs where you know that there's high quality mentors to provide. And so we can't just say to people, you're going to have to get a BA and some sort of teacher certification with practice teaching, with that also helping higher ed develop that capacity to provide the kinds of courses and experiences that people need. Mm-hmm. And I really want to underscore the practice teaching part, because I would actually be probably willing to sacrifice the BA if I knew that people were actually being prepared to be effective teachers. But that's not what we're asking for, given the requirements in California right now.
And I have to ask this question. I got Beth Malloy to the line of fire here.
Okay.
The role of the California Department of Education. I mean, you talked about we need some coordinating body, but should the CDE be strengthened? Because so much of childcare and preschool is already under CDE's umbrella. But role of CDE.
Well, I think that, the reality of the way that childcare and early education has evolved in this country and therefore also in California is that we have sort of a divide between the programs that are see their mission explicitly as providing early learning opportunities and really educating and preparing kids for kindergarten. And then there are other programs who see their mission as really providing care to meet the needs of parents, right? We have parents who need to work. We have children who need to be safe and supported while their parents work. And I think the key thing is establishing some kind of structure in the state that would help to coordinate those systems, because they really are serving the same kids and they have similar goals, and there's no reason that you can't both support parental work and provide high quality early learning opportunities at the same time.
With the kind of flexibility that Beatrice pointed out, because not every family needs the same thing.
And I should mention that our incoming superintendent of public instruction, Tony Thurmond, just went on a trip to the East Coast to look at, in fact, met with you, Ellen, is that correct?
Yes.
And visited Boston and New York City to look at what's happening there. So people are looking. And the superintendent of public instruction is also inclined to work on this. So it's going to take more than a village, right?
Yes.
So I just want to go to Yolanda Valdez' last word, because in some ways, talking with you, you are really dealing with a population we don't hear enough about, but many kids of migrant workers, immigrant kids, who I think are really having a very tough time now. And you are able to serve that population.
Yes, we are. Our goal, I have a wonderful team, a very hardworking team that really believes in what we can do and not what we can't do. When you look at what we're doing as a district, we're above the county average in our CAS scores, graduation, and all other measures, and that's because we're really focusing in and digging in on what we can do and not what we can't do. And we're using all the funds available, building partnerships with all different wonderful entities like the Central Valley Foundation and our migrant program at the county and all other partners to try to just serve our kids to the highest of levels.
Mm-hmm. But I'm struck by that you are able to do it with a very difficult, very, very challenging population. Mm-hmm. So I'm afraid we're going to have to leave it at that. Many of you sent in questions. I'm hoping there's a way to capture these questions, which I'm going to try to get to the panelists. These are actually all good ideas for EdSource to follow up on and potentially write stories on. And we will be putting this on our website and hopefully on the PACE website. Maybe we can convince LPI so people can have access to this. And Ellen?
Near will put it on our website so you can have it nationally.
Okay, and as well as the slides. I hope many of you weren't trying to write everything down, but we will make those available. I feel, you know, one of the things that gives me hope is that just the kind of work that's being done in California at all levels and the kind of resources and knowledge and insights represented on this panel are really very, very, very inspiring. And I want to thank all of you for your work, to get more information on all the issues we talked about. The getting down to facts is really a gold mine of information, just real actual data that Deborah Stipe and colleagues and Beth Malloy worked on it. You can go to gettingdowntofacts.com.
LPI website.
And the LPI website. So it's easy to find. We just see this as a beginning of a conversation, not the end of it. I know we are all looking forward to seeing what Governor-elect Gavin Newsom will do in a few weeks. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.